Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The open ceremony will begin in a moment. Please take your seats. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Her Excellency the Portuguese Secretary of State for Defense, Professor Ana Isabel Xavier, welcome to the Force Atlantic Center Maritime Security Course. The coordinator of the Atlantic Center, Rear Admiral Nuno de Noronha Bragança, will now deliver some words.
Good morning all, and welcome to Açores, if I can say this. Your Excellency, the representative of the Republic in Açores, Ambassador, Madam Secretary of State of National Defense, Excellency, first and foremost, I would like to thank you for your participation in the opening ceremony of the fourth course of Maritime Security course, which once again underlines that the Atlantic Center is a priority for Portuguese foreign and defense policy, whose value has always been emphasized. Your Excellency, Vice President of the Açores Regional Government, your support has been instrumental in fostering the growth of initiatives such as this course, and I'm certain that our partnership will continue to be prosperous and attentive in leading us towards the development that we intend to achieve in coming future. Regional Secretary for Environment and Climate Action, Mayor of Praia de Vitória, members of the Portuguese Parliament, Your Excellencies, Honorable Ambassadors, external representative of civilian and military entities, distinguished speakers, and auditors. I'm very pleased to address you in this opening ceremony of the fourth Maritime Security course under the topic of illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing in the wide Atlantic, a key focus for the international community organized by the Atlantic Center and the National Defense Institute of Portugal in partnership with the United Nations Institute for Training and Research, the African Atlantic States Process Initiative, the Enhanced Maritime Action, the Gulf of Guinea Maritime Institute, the Institute for Security Studies, the African Center for Strategic Studies, the European Maritime Safety Agency, and the Air Center and the Policy Center for the New South, to all of whom I express my appreciation. Allow me to extend my deepest gratitude to the Portuguese Armed Forces, whose dedication and availability have contributed to this endeavor. In that respect, we underline the welcome at the Portuguese Air Force Base 4, Colonel Pauline, thank you very much, and to US 65th Air Base Group, Lajes, and the participation of the National Maritime Authority, the security forces service, and the various agencies involved during the different stages of the course. Ladies and gentlemen, the illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing concerns us all. and it is truly a whole of Atlantic issue that must be tackled together. As we know, the impacts and scale of the problem vary across different Atlantic areas and countries. Furthermore, it is the multidisciplinary component of the IU fishing threat that targets the activity as of significant relevance for economic activities, local ecosystems, and to the overall balance of our ocean and connected Atlantic communities. Coastal states are becoming more aware of economic value their waters hold and the importance of striking a balance between blue growth, ocean health, and sustainability. Development and maritime security agendas are two sides of the same coin that need to work shoulder by shoulder. With that insight, the mission of the Atlantic Center is to contribute towards the development of an Atlantic community of interest, focused on the security of the region, which is understood in both broad terms, and committed to developing cooperative initiatives and actions to jointly address the established priorities under the principle of complementarity. Through concerted efforts and strategic partnership, we endeavor to forge an Atlantic community dedicated to safeguarding our shared maritime domain. Today, 6 years after its foundation, we can congratulate ourselves on the participative, plural, and persistent way in which the Atlantic Center has played its role in promoting political dialogue on Atlantic security and safety, prompting reflection and debate on the cross-cutting challenge facing this region. Moreover, it is precisely in times of great complexity, such as those that the international community is currently undergoing, that the imperative for collaboration and knowledge change cannot be overstated. It plays a fundamental role in facilitating the understanding of the contemporary world and or our all-of-Atlantic community. The existence of this community is practiced as a result in the creation of a new space of political dialogue, research, and knowledge development, as well as support for capacity building. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what we are today. A center that has not conditioned the partner participation in other organizations. On the contrary, it is my understanding that the participation in different organizations, besides having obvious advantage for each of our partners, reinforce and strengthen the Atlantic Center by allowing different insights and contributions to be brought to this forum of dialogue, diversity, and inclusivity. I'm also convinced that the Atlantic Center has been blazing a trail of optimism regarding the future, and allow me to briefly explain why. First, grow not only at a diplomatic level, but also at the civil society level. What started in 2021 with 16 countries is today an initiative that encompasses 23 countries from the Atlantic Basin. The Atlantic Center has succeeded in broadening its external projection, having also shown a relevant capacity of attraction as attested by the interest of third countries and organizations. In that regard, we will shortly witness a manifestation of that growth with the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding between the Atlantic Center and UNITAR and the Atlantic Center and the African Atlantic States Process Initiative, whose partnership will surely bring prosperity and development addressing the same objectives. Secondly, diversity. Inherently linked to growth, there is an obvious tendency in the collective path we are pursuing towards the whole of Atlantic community. Our values lie in respecting each partner difference and explore such intricacies in shared vision that aims to join the North and the South in an inclusive community. Naturally, diversity is not only unavoidable, but advantaged and thus intrinsically welcome. The bottom line is that joint agreed priorities must be tackled by all and understood through local, regional and international lens. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where trust comes in. We cannot have growth or diversity without substance, without a feeling that brings us together. And that is trust. Trust in our projects, trust in our knowledge production, trust in our team, and perhaps more importantly, trust in what we are trying to build together as a community whose goal is a safe and prosperous Atlantic. And this, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, is why we are here. Although not being a comprehensive list, I'm confident that this overview allows us to face the future of the Atlantic Centre with optimism. Our ability to overcome challenge and chart a course towards a more secure and prosperous Atlantic is not an exercise of futurology. It is the present, which we are doing here today. I reiterate my thanks to all of whom are contributing to this course and reaffirm our commitment to advancing maritime security in the Atlantic region and, with the help of all of you, to build a whole of Atlantic community. Thank you all.
His Excellency, the Vice President of the Regional Government of Açores, Artur will now address the audience.
Em primeiro lugar, bom dia. It's good morning in Portuguese. So, one word to learn today is bom dia. Com muito gosto que aqui estou a representar o Governo Regional dos Açores. Gostaria de agradecer muito particularmente ao Sr. Representante da República e o nosso estimado amigo, Sr. Embaixador Pedro Catarino, que sempre nos honra e distingue com a sua presença. Your Excellency, the representative of the Republic in Açores, Ambassador Pedro Catarino and your friend, Madam Secretary of State of Defense, welcome to Açores. Bem-vindo à região autónoma dos Açores e à ilha Terceira. Regional Secretary of Environment and Climate Action, dear colleague, Mayor of Praia da Vitória, members of Portuguese Republic Parliament, Rear Admiral Coordinator of the Atlantic Centre, the 65th Air Base Group, Lajes Field, ambassadors, other civilian and military authorities. Speakers, moderators and attendees for the 4th Maritime Security course. Distinguished guests. First of all, I would like to welcome the Secretary of State for Defense to Terceira and wish her all the best in holding her position. It is an honor to have you in Açores, and I hope that from now on we can establish a working relationship with the Republic's government that effectively solves our islanders' problems. I also congratulate the Atlantic Centre in the person of the Rear Admiral Nuno Bragança for holding the 4th Maritime Security course at Lajes Base, and this year we'll discuss the illegal, unreported and regulated fishing in the Atlantic. As a partnership project, the Atlantic Centre has established itself as an organization for excellence that thinks strategically about the present and future of human security and defence in the Atlantic. It has also established itself as a coordination platform between countries and organizations to deal with new threats and as a space for human resources, capacity building and training in defence. It is therefore a project that needs to be valued and praised because much of the future of European security is a never-changing world involves focus on the Atlantic and consequently on the role of the Azores that the Azores can play in this matter. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, the fate of the autonomous region of Azores has always been associated with the Atlantic project. History proves it. During the 16th and 17th centuries, the islands played a decisive role in maritime traffic as a mandatory stopover point for fleets from the Orient and Brazil. In the 19th century, the Atlantic centrality of the Azores took on new dimensions with the mooring of submarine cables in Fayal Island, which made the island an international communication center. It's always very good to remember these historical facts. In the 20th century, this region of the North Atlantic played a central role in the West defense and security policy, which military bases being established on islands, such as São Miguel, Santa Maria, Flores, and Terceira. In Terceira, the Lajes base, where we are now, and allow me a special compliment to Commander Moldão, who is role in commanding this base and the relation with the Azorean authorities. Thank you, Commander. As I said, the Lajes base is a historical testimony of geostrategic importance of the Azores. Despite of this Azorean path, a result from its geographical position, the truth is that the country, with the European continentalization and Eastern enlargement, has lost its Atlantic vocation. That's a fact. It's not just Portugal. Europe itself hasn't been making the most of the Atlantic's potential for regional, national and international development. Therefore, it's time for Portugal and Europe to seize the opportunity that the Atlantic represents and overcome this perverse effect of European integration. As a country, we have the duty to recover our Atlantic vocation, making Europe aware of its maritime dimension and not just its continental dimension. And to do so, we have to first of all define a strategic vision for this geographical space that links the Americas to Europe. It means bringing more intelligence, wisdom and ambition to it in order to make advantage of the potentials and resources that this ocean has and to maintain it as a space of cooperation and security. Any strategy for the Atlantic only makes sense if the Azores are specifically and thoroughly evaluated. It is with the Azores that Portugal, Europe and NATO are able to control air and sea space, preventing the proliferation of transnational threats. It is with the Azores that Portugal and Europe are able to have a maritime control and security system in the Euro-Atlantic area. It is with the Azores that Portugal is able to have one of the largest exclusive economic zones, EEZ, in the world, and a continental shelf abundant in natural resources that have yet to be identified and explored. It is with Azores that we can develop research tools and apply research in areas such as environmental sustainability, the ocean, space, and biodiversity. Our vocation is European, but also Atlantic. If in the past Atlanticity meant the affirmation of national sovereignty, today it must be a factor of progress and the apex of the transatlantic link between Europe and America. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that the Atlantic Centre is a good initiative to re-evaluate the Atlantic. However, it won't be enough, but it is a starting point for rethinking Portugal projected as a country and as global geopolitical region in collaboration with partner states and organizations. We must remember that in defense matters, and given the constant changes in international relations, it is in the Atlantic and in the Azores in particular that Europe has its outmost waistline of defense. I hope that the fourth Maritime Security course is an opportunity to discuss and reflect on the issue of illegal and unregulated fishing, but also to further develop these broader issues that I have mentioned in order to maximize the role of Azores in the Atlantic. I am relying on the commitment and dedication of all participants to make this initiative a success and to make a positive contribution to the future of the Azores, of the Portugal and the Europe. Thank you very much for your presence, and I wish you all a good week of work. Thank you, and once again, welcome to Terceira Island and the Azores archipelago. Thank you, and good luck. Thank you.
Her Excellency, the Portuguese Secretary of State for Defense, Professor Ana Isabel Xavier, will now address the audience. Vice President of the Regional Government of the Azores, Your Excellency the Representative of the Republic in the Azores, members of the Regional Assembly of the Azores, mayors and local authorities, admirals and generals, dear ambassadors, other civilian and military entities, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure for me to be here in Terceira for the opening of the 4th Maritime Security course, organized by the Atlantic Centre under the topic Illegal, Unreported, Unregulated Fishing in the Atlantic. As this is my first time speaking at an Atlantic Centre event as Secretary of State for National Defence, it is even more exciting to witness the enthusiasm and the dynamism that continues to surround both this course and the Atlantic Center itself. Congratulations, Albert, for the success of all your work. This year's edition takes place under a particularly challenging international geopolitical environment. In addition to the war in Ukraine, the conflict in the Middle East shows no sign of abating. We also witness growing instability in Africa, the spread of transnational crime and terrorism, the violent extremism and organized crime, overwhelming humanitarian crisis and environmental degradation, among other threats. And the Atlantic is an inevitable stage in all these processes, which is why ensuring its security is paramount. On the other hand, the vulnerabilities of the Atlantic's vast transport and subsea cable networks, vital for global trade and communication, are becoming more evident as they are increasingly threatened by piracy, terrorism, and geopolitical tensions among the states. This can severely impact international trade and supply chains, as well as navigation safety and communications. On the other hand, there's an observable growth of traditional and hybrid threats in the Atlantic, including the intensification of military presence and of the contest over natural resources, including raw materials and energy sources, as well as marine resources. And this is why the Portuguese government, through the Ministry of National Defense, in close coordination with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, continues to support the Atlantic Center and the organization of another edition of the Maritime Security Course. In fact, the Atlantic Center initiative represents one of the most considerable investments in the context of Portugal's foreign and defense policy in recent years. Atlantic nations are unilaterally bound by a common history, by shared needs and concerns, but also by their reliability on a safe and secure Atlantic Ocean. These are more than enough reasons to galvanize us to develop a platform focused on a whole-of-Atlantic approach, promoting political dialogue, capacity building, and the exchange of knowledge directed towards maritime security and multilateral cooperation in the Atlantic. The whole-of-Atlantic premise that underlies activities of the Atlantic Center takes advantage of Portugal's privileged position and Terceira Islands as a bridge between Europe, America, and Africa. This, in turn, reflects the Atlantic Center's own value added as a space of convergence between the north and the south of the Atlantic Ocean in security matters. Our view of security in this community is broad, and it includes several dimensions. One of these is environmental security and sustainability, which we take very seriously at the Portuguese Ministry of National Defense. In fact, just 6 months ago, a strategy for the environment, security and climate change was launched by the Ministry, whose implementation is now well underway. The topic of this course, illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing in the Atlantic, concerns precisely environmental security and sustainability, but it also affects other security dimensions. Firstly, this practice has a significantly negative impact for environmental and ecological security due to overfishing and to the disruption and destruction of marine ecosystems. Secondly, it affects overall maritime security due to frequent association with other criminal activities at sea and to potential territorial and boundary disputes. Finally, these practices affect economic and food security, often resulting in dire economic outcomes, including price fluctuations and loss of revenue, as well as stock depletion. As always, it is in the more fragile regions where the repercussions of fishing are more severe, rendering traditional fishing unviable, which leads to economic hardship inland and, not long after, to a never-ending cycle of growing criminality, instability, and insecurity. As such, we need to develop the right capacities to address these difficult challenges affecting both sea and land, and we need to do it as an Atlantic community. In line with the broadness and diversity of the security challenges we face in the Atlantic Ocean, the Atlantic Center is itself a forum for the cooperation of a very broad, diverse and representative group of 23 Atlantic signatory states, which continues to expand in direct recognition of the interests that we are able to foster. Just last year, we enriched this community of partners by welcoming Togo and Ghana to the fold. And I am sure that the signing of the two memorandums of understanding that will take place today, one with the African Atlantic States Process and the other with the United Nations Institute for Training and Research, will further reinforce the capacity of the Atlantic Center to reflect and act on this tremendous challenge we face in the Atlantic. I would like to conclude by congratulating once more the Atlantic Center and the National Defence Institute of Portugal on this Additions Programme, which I hope will be thoroughly appreciated by the 42 auditors and 21 speakers joining us from more than 20 different countries. I also applaud the work done by the renewed partners that helped bring the course to life, namely the Gulf of Crimea Maritime Institute, the Policy Center for the New South, the Institute for Security Studies, and the United Nations Institute for Training and Research. I'm equally grateful to all the institutions that continue to support this truly innovative and relevant project. And of course, a word of appreciation and gratitude to the countries and partners that, like us, believe that through cooperation we will be able to keep this space at ours, peaceful and secure. I wish you all an enjoyable and thought-provoking course. Thank you so much. We will proceed with the signature of two memorandums of understanding. I invite you all together near the panel of the logo of the Atlantic Center, where will be done the signatures. The Memorandum of Understanding between the African Atlantic States Process and the Atlantic Center will be signed by Permanent Secretary of the AASP, Ambassador Tariq Iziraden, and the Atlantic Center Coordinator, Real Admiral Nuno de Noronha Bragança. We will now have a coffee break, but first we ask you to gather outside for a group photo. We will resume at 11:30 for the round table. Thank you. We will resume in 5 minutes.
Catarina, não me faz ao pé do campo. Foda-se, não ligas as nenhumas para conversar, foda-se. Já estou a estar ali ao pé de mim. Não sei se tem microfones ativos, sei lá o que estão a ver. Qual é este? Este dá. Drop it frame está a 0 agora. O vídeo é que mesmo aí. Agora não está descontinado, não tirei mais. Vou lá.
The round table under the topic EU Fishing and Atlantic Threat Without Borders will now take place, with the moderation by Professor Assis Malaquias from the Africa Center for Strategic Studies and interventions of Air Vice Marshal Frank Benson from the Gulf of Guinea Maritime Institute, Professor Anoop Fayal from the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, and Andrea Tassoni on behalf of the European Maritime Safety Agency. Please, sirs, come to stage.
Well, good morning, everyone. Let me first stand on existing protocol. My name is Asif Malakias. I'm the Dean of the Africa Center for Strategic Studies at the National Defense University. And it's my pleasure to be the moderator for this session. Allow me to make 3 points very quickly before I introduce the distinguished panelists. Point number 1, existing global constructs governing the relationships between states within a Westphalian framework require constant refinements to meet emerging and expanding threats. Point number 2, at sea, neither fish nor maritime criminals respect borders. Point number 3, the collapse of fisheries in many countries here in the Atlantic is becoming a reality. Answers must be found in events like this, where experts of today and tomorrow gather to discuss the implications of this threat without borders on the security of Atlantic communities and states. So it's now my pleasure to introduce the panelists. First, Air Vice Marshal retired Frank Hansen, on my far left. He's the Executive Director of the Gulf of Guinea Maritime Institute. Prior to his appointment, he was the Chief of Air Staff of the Ghana Air Force. In that capacity, he was instrumental in developing a holistic interoperability between the Ghana Navy and the Ghana Air Force. He was part of the consultative team that worked on Ghana's National Integrated Maritime Strategy. The Air Vice Marshal has served with the United Nations and African Union on various peacekeeping missions. He holds a Master of Science in Strategic Studies with Grand Strategy concentration. He's an alumnus of Harvard University, the U.S. Air University, the U.S. Air War College, Ghana Command and Staff College, and Nigeria Command Staff College. To my immediate left is Dr. Anup Payal. He is an associate professor in public and international relations at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. His research and teaching focus on international security, peacekeeping, and maritime security. His recent publications include Interstate Hostility and Maritime Crime in a Journal Marine Policy, and Maritime Piracy and Duration of Armed Conflicts in International Area Studies Review, and a book chapter titled Maritime Piracy and Foreign Policy, published in the Oxford Handbook of Foreign Policy. The third speaker in the middle is Mr. Andreas Tassoni. Mr. Tassoni started his maritime career in the Genoa University, where he obtained a degree in maritime economy back in 1999. Shortly after, he served for a year in the Italian Navy. From 2000 to 2003, he worked as policy advisor for an Italian member of European Parliament, both in Brussels. He has a very extensive experience in this area. In terms of the structure of the roundtable, it will run about 15 minutes. The Admiral told me to end promptly at 10 past noon, and we shall do that, Admiral. Each panelist will have about 10 minutes to offer their remarks. At the end of their remarks, there will be about a 20-minute question and answer where the audience will be expected to ask a few questions. So without any further ado,
when it comes to IU, it means different things to a lot more people. Before I got here, I made a visit to a location in Accra to speak and ask what IU means to the honored person in the street. Indeed, if I had the opportunity, I would have come with one of you, a 70-year-old woman who had been in the fish business, inherited her business from the grandmother. So when we speak about IU, we're speaking about the livelihood of the honored person. Indeed, it's an industry where there are wins and there are losses. From our own research, especially those of us coming from Africa, the losses are huge. And we also see it as a balance between the green economy and the blue economy. And by green economy, I'm referring to our forests, referring to our minerals, referring to our people, how much revenue we get from the green economy as compared to the blue economy. At this point, let me thank the Center for giving us a platform, at least, to increase the dialogue, and it is a dialogue that brings some of the solutions we are looking for. Let me touch the audience a bit this morning with some revelation that I got from the Honorary President. I wish I had a video to show you the things you don't see on CNN, BBC. How a 70-year-old woman can only sell about $10 to $20 of fish every week. The main reason is because the fish stock, the pollution, and the overfishing weighs very heavily on such people. When I asked her, what do you think about what we are going through? We have belief this is a deliberate activity at sea, and if you don't do anything about it, that is going to be the end of her small business and many more like any other country across Africa. When I see the women in our audience, I think they will agree with me that they are very central to the economy of very small countries. Let me quote them. Overcoming poverty is not a task of charity. I know is an act of justice. And so this forum will begin to look at how we can use our soft and hard power. When there's no fish, we find the fish in the cold store. When it comes out of the cold store, the price doubles. When the price doubles, the market gets expensive. When the market gets expensive, the individuals are able to make purchases. Now, if you can't make purchases, it means we invest into fishing in the country becomes quite difficult. I believe that we are at the right place. We are right policy we can say. And it is time to replace we very cooperative policies, bottom-up approach, we are very hard on our decisions because women and children are suffering out of this problem. Activity that will be done. And focus a bit on the last one about who gains out of this. In Ghana, we estimate that we lose about $2 billion a year for fishing. Our research also indicates that very big trawlers, fishing boats from well-advanced countries, are fishing from our waters. And I could see from news messages this morning that if we don't do anything, the situation will not improve. Let me end by again expressing the need for us as we look at IMU. We need to be more because its effect is what we felt in Europe, migration. Its effect is what we felt on the coastal states. And some of them are illicit drugs, piracy, and above all, very stringent economic conditions. Thank you again for giving me the opportunity. I hope I have touched at least a few of our women here. I think it's women's business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Air Vice Marshal. And thank especially for sticking to time.
For researchers and actually speaking and communicating to policymakers and practitioners, there's nothing better than that. And so for this opportunity, I'm very thankful. As someone who does research on maritime security broadly, I've been focusing mostly on the Indo-Pacific region, trying to understand the link between piracy and illegal fishing, and recently the region of Gulf of Guinea. I'm going to give you a brief, my overall thought on where IUU fishing stands and in terms of our own understanding and what are the challenges. And so to start with, in my own research, what I found is although sustainable fishing has some of the topic that is not new, some of the understanding we're gaining is new because of a lot of the technologies, the data from the satellite and so forth. And so we're getting a lot of new understanding of illegal fishing. But there also constitutes some misunderstanding and not misunderstanding, but lack of clear understanding about what exactly constitutes illegal fishing. What is illegal about the illegal fishing? And that is challenging because it is not uniform across countries. And it is somewhat easier to label any foreign vessels in one's own water conducting fishing and labeling them as illegal. But what about at the local level? So these are some of the things that came up in my own research. What practices are legal and illegal? I think that requires more study and policy making and understanding not only at the policy level, but also the citizens, the rules that are appropriate. Indonesia, one trend was, as Indonesia was doing a lot of policy making on illegal fishing, what constitutes illegal fishing, what it does not. They were trying to have a lot of law of the fishing taxes and so forth, which is the same practice that unregulated and unreported in the past, were being counted as legal practices. And so that's, that's a good story for Indonesia. And to sum up, I think the good news is understanding what illegal fishing is getting better and better. But the bad news is the challenges persist. I was looking at one of the websites by the Illegal Fishing Index that reported 2023 was had higher level of illegal fishing compared to 2022 and before. So this suggests that although we have a better understanding, the challenges persist. And when I talk about challenges, few things that I would like to highlight. I think in the realm of illegal fishing, one of the big challenges is the action itself. Right? So it's illegal, a lot of it is hidden, so information and data about illegal fishing is very hard to gain. And especially for researchers like me, who are trying to understand the pattern of where it occurs and when it occurs, how to make predictions and so forth, the data is very hard to obtain. With the AIS data, that is that tracks the fishing vessels and so forth, things have become tremendously better. In my last research, I was using the AIS data for the Gulf of Guinea. It was incredible the amount of information that we can get. However, that data is not available easily, and perhaps Mr. Kasoni can speak much better in that. But that availability or the lack of data incentive to share across the border, and that's a challenge again. The clearing, if there is something like the clearing house of the data, where illegal fishing occurs, where all states need to are obliged to share the information and the data, then we would have a much better understanding of the patterns and the trends of where it occurs and how we can prevent it. And finally, last but not the least, links to other sort of crimes. So earlier there were some other studies that suggested that illegal fishing and piracy, these are some of the crimes that go together. What we uncovered was a slightly different relationship. What we found was when illegal fishing declines, the likelihood of piracy becomes much higher. And that's not the case with legal fishing, meaning when legal fishing declines, we don't see the probability of piracy going up. So it's only with illegal fishing, which suggests that the pockets of places and regions where all this criminal milieu are, so those are some problematic spots. So that's all I wanted to share. So a brief my own understanding about illegal fishing in different regions. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much and good morning everybody. First of all, I would like to thank the Atlantic Center for giving ENSA this opportunity to speak here. You may wonder what the European Maritime Safety Agency is doing in the mayo-related framework. Of course, we have a representative from the European Fisheries Control Authority who will take the floor later in the afternoon. But indeed, IEU has a safety and security dimension. A safety one because we ran a study a year ago and we found out that only in the last 7 years in Europe, we lost 120 fishing licenses. So we have a serious issue of safety. Because when you lose a fishing license, most likely also lose a fisherman for more than one. And we know also that Portugal has also had some in the past of these occurrences. And we want to work as much as possible to avoid this in the future. From a security point of view, of course, there are also concerns. And this affects, of course, maritime trade all around Europe and the world. The previous speaker refers to data. Yes, in EMSA we gather all ideas from all over the world. And every day we get something like 55 million ship positions. Of course, that's impossible to work as a person. So we're now applying artificial intelligence and algorithms. So we are able to provide national authorities specific tailor-made products that tell them exactly what they want to know at sea. This, of course, we do it for Europe, for European member states, because we are a European institution. But I think the message I want to pass today is that actually now we're maritime and bilateral countries. So yesterday night I was thinking about another beautiful Lisbon. And there we have we fly 9 to 10 drones this summer, for example. And with drones we are able to spot many different things, from illegal fishing to pollution, migrants, everything. We have satellite. We deliver every year 15,000 satellite images. Actually, we cooperate a lot with the MRCC in Açores. Whenever there's a problem, Açores MRCC, they tend to contact us and we cooperate with them, providing satellite information so that we can retrieve and spot anything that is, for example, missing, a small yacht boat or something like that. So, what I just want to highlight here is that, A, we are also safety concerned, of course, because I need to disconnect with safety as well. And safety for me, particularly, coming from a family of 5 generations of sailors, means first of all saving a person at sea, first of all. And the other thing I said, technology is there, but I think where we have to improve, and that I'm looking most likely outside Europe, because in Europe I think we are progressing very well, is cooperation. It's sharing of information, sharing of data. I can just conclude this first part of my intervention with an example. We have now another service that we provide, and thanks to that with satellite we can identify pollution at sea. We didn't invent it ourselves, we don't claim we are inventor of this system. But doing it for 27 member states, we can obtain a much better price when we buy these images in the market. And with one image, we serve up to 7-8 members. So if we take an image in the Baltic, for example, we can distribute this image, which we acquire only once, to 8 countries. So I'm looking now more at regional level, of course, but also outside Europe, I believe that the regional population should be increased, because you can only gain from that. You can share the burden, the costs, but you can also be much more effective in obtaining the target. Of course, in this context, it's IEU related, but as I said, from our side, it's mostly safety and security. I think I've behaved very well.
You certainly have. Speaking of being well behaved, this must be the best behaved panel I've ever moderated in my many years. Wonderful presentations, and I just use the moderator's prerogative to ask the first round of questions, and then I'll pass the mic to the audience. Vice Air Marshal, you're talking. One of the things you put on the table is the whole issue of justice. How do you see? How would you assess the ability of, especially African countries here in the Gulf of Guinea, to deliver consequences to illegal activities, unregulated activities? The fisheries are collapsing. In your own country, the data shows that the fisheries will hit rock bottom. what is it that you are doing to ensure that consequences are fully delivered to all actors who are devastating the fisheries?
Thank you once again. I really believe that learning center is one of the anchor points for such delivery of justice. Look at it. We have, for example, we have a 200 camera easy. And we don't have the satellites and the drones and the capabilities to identify, procure evidence, put a legal finish on this matter. Again, I mentioned that those who are doing this illegality know them. We know them. These are countries or fishing organizations with huge capacity. So this will require some level of international collaboration. On our part, African IC, we also say that IUU is more internationally spread than the local companies. So far, all the children we have arrested, all the cycles who are there to take the fish study at sea. How many of them can we prosecute? And for us, the issue for us is not prosecution, which is important. But we have a partnership that can protect what we legal. Basically, it's not what we expect. And I think out of this conference, we will also learn some of the new things that you have, that if you have issues, where to report them, so that partners who have the capacity sort of support. We don't have the fisheries, health issues department. It takes more than this prosecution.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm sure we'll come back to that issue, critical issue of partnership in the conversation. But let me now turn to Dr. Brown. You mentioned something that appears to be counterintuitive. That is, when illegal fishing declines, piracy goes up. One would think that illegal fishing declines has a more effective action at sea. So if it's effective state action at sea to ensure that the fishery is still healthy, why is it that that same state action is failing vis-a-vis piracy? Could you unpack that a little bit more?
Thank you for asking that. Yeah, that's one of the things that we find is with the decline in illegal fishing, the rate of the risk for piracy increases. And here we're not talking about we're talking about so illegal fishing. Let's say there are like 100 events, and if they decline from 100 to say 10, the piracy event it's a rare event, right? So compared to illegal fishing. So we do see the onset of piracy, maybe from 0 we start to see 1 or 2 or 3. So it's not that 50 illegal fishers events decline and we have 50 piracy events. It's a rare event, but we do start to see that when there are lots of suppression of illegal fishing, we start to see piracy. So in the criminal literature, it's often called the crime displacement. And we found that first in the case of Indonesia, and Indonesia, with immense focus on illegal fishing, they have a very heavy-handed approach. And they would blow up the vessels and try to show all the illegal fishers that this is going to be consummate. And it was tremendously effective in curbing illegal fishing. But we also found that wherever the illegal fishing declined, in those areas, we started to see piracy events. Mind you, Indonesia is also very close to a very high traffic area, but we didn't find that. And so we thought that was only Indonesia, maybe Indonesia is unique. And when we started to look at the events in the Gulf of Guinea, we found the same thing in the Gulf of Guinea as well. So our argument is that when there's decline in illegal fishing, and there are lots of people who are now illegal fishers that are not unemployed or they don't have livelihoods, they're ready to take that risk and conduct piracy events. And that's our argument, and we do find that in the
You know, if I had time, I would ask you a follow-up, which is this. Are we talking about piracy or about armed robberies? And because that's an important difference. But maybe somebody from the audience will ask that question. In the meantime, Mr. Tusoni, TIT. That's interesting. The technology is there. But that begs the question for whom? I think that's one of the Vice Air Marshal was kind of alluding to that question. Is the technology there for the Europeans? Is the technology there for the Africans? Is the technology there for everybody? So what I'm really asking is questions of availability, questions of access, questions of cost, questions of training, those types of questions. If you can unpack that a bit, I would really appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, technology is there and is there for everybody. The satellite is up there. We acquire data, we acquire services. We don't own drones, we don't own satellite. It's very costly. So I think it's a matter simply of gathering options, opportunities, funds, of course. I can't help. But I think it's a matter of really priorities, because the satellite is there for everybody. So particularly now, of course, these eye in the skies, as we like to call them, they are there. What I think is important to understand is, because we've seen this also with pollution in our case, you don't just bias an image for the purpose of buying. You have to have an entire system behind. And I give you once again the example of pollution. We provided the service, but it was only a few years ago that the first European member state changed their legal system and adapt so that one of our images can be used in court against a potential pollutant. So what I mean is that you have to put together the entire system. It's not simply buying one image per se. So once again, if I have to answer your initial question, I think from a pure technological perspective, we are there. It's a matter, of course, of gathering funds, resources. But again, I say gathering, because if you go on your own, you have a completely different approach compared to if you go in other countries, like regional.
Thank you very much. So let me open it up to the audience. If you don't mind raising your hand so I can recognize you and identify yourself as you pose the question, and perhaps you could direct your question to a particular member of the panel. And probably pick 2 or 3 questions and then get the responses from our distinguished panelists. So, question here. Right there with the applicant. Any other questions? Okay, right.
Thank you all. My name is Paul Isbell from the 106th Polytechnic University in Vermont. Forgive my ignorance, but I'm sure this is very easy to answer. But what exactly is the difference between illegal, unreported, and unreported and unregulated? And is any of these categories more challenging or more frequent than the others? Intuitively, from an economic point of view, I would suspect that the big problem could be underreporting, even posing within a legal scenario, perhaps. But that's just my outsider's approach.
Right. Seeing no other, go ahead, sir.
Well, thank you very much. I have to thank the panelists for the insightful presentation. Because I was about to ask our colleague from the European Union about technology is there because it's protected, but I wanted to ask him about access. But it seems to me that he made it even more challenging because he was talking about resources and funds. I don't know what he meant by that, because it's our colleague from Africa talks about capacities are lacking. Colleague from the research side talks about data lacking. But what do you mean by resources that are lacking or funding, and how we can overcome this challenge? Thank you.
All right, well, let's address those two. They're immediate questions. They're very substantive questions. One is a definitional question. Maybe I'll ask you to address the definitional question. You know, what is really the difference between the I and the other fundamental? What is the difference? And then TIT, I think you put your finger on something really interesting here. The TIT question is for you, and the Air Vice Marshal will maybe address any gaps,
Thank you. For the difference between illegal and the other legal, the first, I think it can be explained in terms of state capacity. So for fishing to be legal, the state capacity is high, and the catch a vessel that have been fishing in areas that they are not supposed to fish. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. They're not legal. But in the case of unreported and unregulated, I think it speaks more towards the lack of state capacity. So, as a state, I would like to catch all the perpetrators and the bad actors that are fishing illegally, but I may not have the capacity to do it. And so a lot of the catches may go unreported, and they might be unregulated. And so a lot of, so I would say a lot of the fish catches that we see in states that lack the capacity to monitor and have the reach is what we see in terms of unregulated and unreported fishing in that extent.
And then to come back to the second question, what I meant is that, once again, we're talking about service that exists. So we can of course bring the example in Europe, but we're not the only one working on these systems. So what I meant there is that a group of countries, as I said, at regional level possibly, should, in my view, try to gather forces, and of course, when I say countries, at the end of the day, we're about services. So you need a budget to buy these things, and try to see how best and more efficiently provide this service to your regional cooperative platform. So I literally see technologically no barriers, because we have it, and there are other parts of the world that they have these systems in place. So what I meant is that it's a matter of gathering forces, sharing more information, because that's the essence we have managed now in Europe. We are sharing information all together. 27 members. Creates really another value to the single data that we obtain. Because we are also able to fuse data from different sensors and give it to different authorities. Now conclude, in ENSA, as I said, we receive 55 million ship position a day. We serve customs authority, we serve border control, we serve our correspondent fishery authorities, we serve maritime safety, we serve maritime investigation, port security, everything. And we give to each of individual community what they need. We don't give everything to everybody, because it makes no sense. So we do tailor products for each community.
Sir, any notes on the Açores?
I will look at the context of rather than the context of maritime security, because from our observation as a pilot, when we go out there looking for ships, at one point we don't know whether it's illegal fishing, robbery, or whatever. So, though we have a kind of AI assistance, you will find that the ship is illegal fishing and nowadays transporting drugs. So, the definition of drug traffic, that is the context that I would like us to look at the definitions of IUU and other threats out there.
Any further questions from the audience?
It is a question that I will ask my comment, if you allow me. I'm not an expert on security, by the way, but I have years life dealing with fisheries. And as a colleague will say, it's against law. And unreported means no one is measuring what is being fished, what is being captured from the ocean, and unregulated means no one regulates the activity in the area. But this problem has political and legal problems that are different from the other. There is illegal fishing almost everywhere, and there is unreported fishing almost everywhere. Whether it can be related with small fisheries, for example, then it is mainly a social problem, and can only be, that was very well described before, and of course they do fishing and they can do drugs or anything else. Unfortunately, it can also be promoted by countries. And when we are talking on illegal, unreported, and unregulated fisheries, there are two different situations from my point of view. One is when this activity depletes dramatically the fishing resources. The other is when there is some kind of equilibrium that would be better from the economical point of view, would be better for countries to receive taxes or whatever, but it's not a crime against nature. So the problem, my question is the following. How can we fight against illegal fishing when there is some kind of promotion by countries in the areas of other countries?
Juliet Obey. I'm representing the Gulf of Guinea Maritime Institute. Wonderful presentations for the panelists. My question is, you made mention of the relationship between IU fishing and piracy. And I'm a bit curious, so I would like you to a little bit unpack on some of the problems what is associated between the relationship. What would be the reasons why IU fishing goes down, piracy goes up? Could I give some outstanding reasons why such incident is happening? Thank you.
Can this problem be eased by transparency? Can the problem of injustice be eased by transparency by governments of those countries? Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. You spoke about the tendencies or the trends for piracy to grow and fishing to get less evidence. I think there are two different areas of it, as what we've heard before. Is that one piece is the illegal fishing associated to the big industry and also to countries. The other thing is local fisheries. And I can recall the example of Somalia, for instance, where, well, illegal fishing stopped simply because there were no resources, either for illegal or legal fishing. So the local communities that have been supported to develop fishing, local fishing, you see piracy as a source so piracy becoming a social problem, becoming a phenomenon impact. So in this, what do you think is happening when we identify the phenomenon of?
So why don't we start with you? Go that way. Just 1 minute.
So thank you for your questions. All excellent questions. I will try to focus on, because there are two questions on the decline in illegal fishing and the increase in piracy. I think the last speaker, the last question was about what do we do about it, and I agree that these are social problems, and I think the implication that we get from the research is the unintended consequence of trying to down the illegal fishing, right? So the unintended consequence. And so I think the focus should be more on the root cause, right? So more types of crime, at the societal level, why is the crime taking place in the first place? And that's exactly what we find in terms of Indonesia. Just trying to use the heavy-handed approach would have an unintended consequence.
And from my side, of course, because of the nature of the institution I represent, I cannot comment on the policy development, but certainly being more of an operational agency, and just because for Somalia, as you mentioned before, of course, we immediately activated service to provide all merchant ships in the region with specific alert and information, and we provide the military service there from UNAF for operation, the tracking of all the vessels. And if the case will be, we will do the same method as where this problem runs.
Thank you. Once again, when I started my presentation, I said I'm representing certain voice who are not here. And that is why I'm here. And that voice is our fish stocks are are going down, and it is having an impact on the social life of women and children. I believe that this conference will be asking as answers hard questions, so that I justice we are looking for we can find. And I thank you for the opportunity.
All right, this concludes the first roundtable. I have time to do two things. First, I think we have time. Secondly, I will ask the others to help me applaud the wonderful work that
On behalf of the Secretary of State for Defense, we now declare the ceremony closed. All participants are invited to join us for lunch at the officials club. A bus is waiting for us outside. Thank you all for your presence and cooperation. Thank you.